Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. So these last few years in my life have really taught me what we call the butterfly effect. A lot of times, seemingly small deviations in life, things that you would never even think about, could mushroom into huge differences later on in life, right? I'll talk about some examples of mine, but let's start with something that I noticed one day and how I discovered the concept of the butterfly effect. Have you ever looked at history's big events and wondered, if somebody had just worn a different piece of clothing or did something differently that day or maybe the day before, how it might have played out? Let me give you an example. I get very sad every time I see a Mazda tribute. Um, I live in the U.S. Mazda tributes used to be a very common on the road. And the reason for the sadness is that my dad bought a green Mazda Tribute in the summer of 2001. He used to drive compact cars. That was his first SUV. He hit a midlife crisis of some sort, and he's never driven a compact car ever since. So it was July, I think, 2001. We had just come home from a trip to see my cousin. My cousin was going to school in Canada, and not long after he bought the car, 9/11 happened. And in my mind, those two events are always linked for some reason. I mean, we did a lot of things that year, obviously, but for some reason, that car, for the time that we owned it, every time I saw it, it brought back memories of 9/11. And I tried to disassociate it. They were separate events, but I can't. That there is a probability. Had my dad not bought the car, we can't say that 9/11 would have happened, right? A pretty high probability that it would have, but we can't say 100%, right? It's probably a one in at least a one in a Google chance, right? A Google being 10 to the power of 100. That had he not bought the Mazda Tribute, 9/11 wouldn't have happened, right? Uh, and right, or I'll let you think about other histories events, right? Obviously, the pandemic might not have happened if whoever didn't get to whatever bat suit, right? Because you gotta have a genetic predisposition, and then you gotta eat that bat suit, right? Imagine the person who started it missed their flight to China or whatever it was, or maybe it was probably a local person. On the way there, got into a car accident, or at some other event, right? Maybe they met somebody and went on a date somewhere else, right? Those are not far-fetched events, by the way, right? Anybody could have some event that diverts them from that wet market, right? But the whole world changed because that one person got stood up on the date and ended up in the wet market instead, or they went on a date at I don't know, or they uh, didn't get into that car accident that they might have been like a few inches away from it. Like, think about how many near-miss car accidents you might get involved in every year, right? You get the idea, right? You get the idea. But I often, in my own personal life, I seldom hit those big butterfly events that benefit me. I often hit them for the worse, right? There were only a handful of times where I hit the butterfly. My most notable one was I was teaching at a tutoring center. This was 3 years ago. And I had switched from one center to another because, I love all of my students. I can't think of a time where I left a job because I didn't like students, clients, or whatever. Even my colleagues usually. But a lot of times, the workplace feels a lot heavier than it has to be, right? Even my current one, I teach at Maricopa Colleges. A lot of times, let me give you an example. Ever since I came to Taiwan, I find I've been eating a lot healthier. I've been able to do 17-hour fasts every day. my workplace isn't very conducive to a healthy lifestyle. There's too much temptation to eat, too many reminders to eat, and it just doesn't flow well. And I can't really explain it. It's not like, hey, I wish John would do this because it's really messing with me. No, it's a general vibe that I cannot really put a finger on. Anyway, I was working at a tutoring center, and the second one I went to was somewhat cleaner. I still had these issues, obviously, the eating disorder problems, posture issues, the way the classroom was situated. And Bellevue, Washington, where I was working, real estate is very limited. I can't really blame the center. They did everything they could to make us comfortable, so that was good. It just goes to show that no matter what you do for a living, there's a lot more to being an X than being an X, no matter what career X is, right? It just goes to show that, right? So the next time you see somebody who seemingly has a dream job, just remember, behind the scenes are also doing a lot of busy work and a lot of unpleasant things that have nothing to do with their job, right? No, the core elements of their job, right? I hope that will change someday, but that's what it is today, at least. One of my students who was studying AP chemistry had brought in a periodic table that showed all sorts of interesting things, pictures of the elements and interesting facts about and most importantly, how rare the elements are in the earth, because that's what caught my eye. I was going to show him why it's such a good buying opportunity for silver. I think at the time the gold to silver ratio had hit an all-time high. It's like 100 and something. And I wanted to show the student that gold is only 10 times more rare than silver. And I showed it, and also platinum at the time was going for like a half or a third of what gold was. I wanted to show my student how rare silver and platinum are. And as I was looking at the table, I noticed quite a few other elements that are rarer than both gold and platinum. Long story short, I now own 26 different metals. I only had 7 on the day that I met the student. Now I have 26. So, and then another beautiful butterfly event was obviously my grandmother's passing. Last winter, my grandmother was 91 years old, and you guys know what's going on. It's still an ongoing saga. But had my grandmother not passed, she's still been alive today, and it might not have played out the way it did. And then it was helped by a few more butterfly events along the way. But usually butterfly events turn out terribly. Like, for example, part of the reason I lost my passport and then later my money, a lot of it, when you thought back at the sequence of events, had a lot of critical events that might have played differently, right, in a different world, right? And that's why I asked you guys to pray. Sometimes when I'm having a long series of bad butterfly events, that's why I like to sing Peter Dislike, to disrupt the chain of events, right? I say it's praying, but the reality is I hope to disrupt the series of bad butterfly events, right? Because after all, just singing a Peter Dislike jingle has the potential of preventing 9/11, or a very low probability. But if the day before 9/11, imagine you invented a time machine and you travel back to September 10, 2001, and you sang Peter Dislike. There's no guarantee 9/11 is going to happen the next day. If you don't do it, it's 100%, right? Because we know it happened, right? But if you just go back and do it, it might only be there might be a 1 in a Google chance that 9/11 doesn't happen, right? Or similarly, all that bismuth that I owe, there's a probability that it might decay into gold, right? But it hasn't. If we had gone back and sang Peter Dislike, we don't know if it would have, right? This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.